Growing number of Minnesota daycares disputing allegations of fraud and empty
Trump administration dispatched federal officers to Minnesota amid renewed concerns over.
At 5:32 a.m., while Minneapolis still slept under the frozen quiet of winter, federal agents struck without a whisper. In seconds, a peaceful neighborhood turned into the scene of a full-blown coordinated takedown. FBI and ICE teams moved in like a trained assault unit. No sirens, no flashing lights, no warning at all. They surrounded the home of a Somali-American mayor once praised as a shining example of community unity. But this time, their approach was pure precision. Doors were smashed open and rooms were cleared one after another with military focus. What they uncovered inside sent shockwaves through the ranks. Investigators stumbled upon a scene no one could have predicted. Illegal substances, stashed weapons, and dozens of children hidden from sight. It was far more sinister than anyone imagined. This wasn't just an arrest, it was the first crack in a massive underground web stretching across the city. And this was only the beginning. What started in that single house before dawn soon unfolded into a citywide operation that felt like something out of a tactical movie. Before sunrise, multiple federal teams, FBI, ICE, and HHS, moved in unison toward their next targets: homes, offices, and community centers that had been under quiet surveillance for weeks. Dark vans rolled in without headlights. Agents, clad in heavy tactical gear, stepped out in silence as city blocks were locked down, one by one. Streets were sealed off, phones went dark, and there was no room for escape. At every corner, uniformed officers held their ground, cutting off any movement as the raid spread across Minneapolis like a tightening grip. At the very same moment, plainclothes teams slipped into position, moving quietly toward storefronts and apartment doors, while the rest of the city was just starting to wake. In the business districts, steel barricades went up almost instantly, blocking early commuters who had no idea what was unfolding before their eyes. Community centers that usually opened for calm morning routines were suddenly surrounded. Doors locked, entrances guarded, and windows watched by agents tracking every movement inside. This wasn't chaos. It was a precision strike, perfectly timed and executed. The operation hit multiple points at once, leaving no room for reaction, no chance for warning. As the first doors were blown open, the pattern became obvious, not through words, but through flawless coordination. Every team moved the same way, low, fast, and ruthless in efficiency. Hallways were cleared, stairwells secured, and rooms swept with movements so sharp they screamed endless training drills. The air was thick with tension. Radios buzzed quietly with short-coded confirmations. No shouting, no wasted noise, just the sound of professionals locking down control. That eerie calm only made the intensity stronger. Inside apartment complexes, residents were quickly pulled aside, told to stay still and to keep clear while the agents surged past. Their eyes never left their targets: specific doors, marked offices, secret rooms. Locks were forced open, desks overturned, and storage spaces exposed in seconds. Nothing could be moved, nothing hidden. Every motion was deliberate, every sweep rehearsed to perfection. Across Minneapolis, identical scenes played out within minutes, painting a picture of a city caught in a silent storm. By sunrise, entire streets near community hubs were sealed shut, the city held tight in a grip no one saw coming. Patrol cars lined up bumper to bumper, sealing off the streets with flashing lights cutting through the dawn haze. Officers took their positions, standing guard while agents stormed buildings that had always blended into the city's daily rhythm. Inside nonprofit offices, file cabinets were thrown open, drawers yanked out, and computers tagged as evidence zones were locked down in seconds. Even the smallest neighborhood clinics weren't spared. Waiting rooms sat eerily empty while agents swept through exam rooms and back offices, opening doors that hadn't been touched in years. The silence inside those spaces was unnerving. The only sounds breaking through were boots striking tile floors and the slow, steady breaths of agents clearing every corner. But this wasn't chaos. It was pure control. Every move, every motion followed an invisible rhythm, a master plan that had been months in the making. The city felt it too. Even those who couldn't see what was happening sensed something massive shifting around them. As unmarked vans and federal vehicles filled neighborhood streets, residents peeked from behind curtains, frozen between fear and curiosity. The sight of armed agents everywhere sent a clear message. Something serious was going down. Officers kept a tight perimeter, keeping crowds from forming while backup teams arrived right on schedule. Entry units rotated out, fresh crews came in, and the momentum never broke for a second. Behind the tactical teams came the evidence techs, snapping photos, tagging files, bagging electronics, and moving with the same sharp focus. No one rushed, but no one hesitated either. That perfect balance made the entire scene feel inevitable, like the city itself had been caught in a tightening grip. By the time the first sunlight hit the rooftops, Minneapolis was already deep in the operation. Phones were confiscated, exits sealed, and movements controlled down to the smallest step. Inside those targeted buildings, there was no chance to react, no chance to hide, only silence and surrender. It became crystal clear this wasn't a negotiation. It was a full-scale enforcement. At every single site, the same cold and calculated pattern played out. Entry, control, search, secure, and hold. Teams rotated in and out like clockwork to keep their focus razor-sharp. Outside, officers locked down the perimeters, keeping curious eyes and restless crowds at bay, while inside, the agents made sure nothing slipped out and nothing unexpected came in. The coordination was unreal. FBI, ICE, HHS, and local task forces moved as one, following a shared command that left no room for confusion or ego. This was a united front, disciplined, silent, and unstoppable. As the morning hours stretched on, the operation's true scale became undeniable. Radio chatter filled with coded updates, each message marking another building as secured, another location ready for the next strike. In some zones, more agents arrived, hauling in evidence, logging files, and boxing up materials that kept piling higher by the hour. Tactical teams didn't stop. They rolled straight toward their next objectives, methodical and unrelenting. The city above it all seemed calm. Traffic moved, lights flickered on. But beneath that quiet surface, the net was tightening with every passing minute. Residents and workers caught in the lockdown were only released once agents cleared their area, and even that happened with strict precision. No rushing, no surprises, no chance for escape. Every exit was monitored, every movement controlled. What unfolded wasn't a burst of chaos, but a slow, relentless clampdown. It marked a turning point, the shift from quiet surveillance to full-blown action. The collaboration of multiple federal forces made one thing clear to everyone watching from the sidelines. This was no longer about if something was happening. It was about just how deep it would go. The raids made one thing undeniable: federal authority had just gone fully visible. Warrants were executed, buildings locked down, and every move played out right in front of the city's eyes. There was no effort to hide it, no soft edges, no cover-up. The scale and precision of it all were the message. Minneapolis wasn't just witnessing a law enforcement action. It was watching the first act of something far bigger. As agents held positions and processed evidence, the city began to realize that this was just the start. Even as the hours passed, the operation kept its measured, unshakable rhythm. No background details were shared, no explanations offered. Each site stayed locked, guards at every door, tape across every entry, and vehicles stationed like sentinels. The rest of the city slowly crept back to life. Traffic lights blinked again, morning commutes resumed, but the targeted zones stayed frozen in place, trapped in a moment that wouldn't move forward. The feeling of absolute control hung heavy in the air. Everyone on the inside, agents, officers, even bystanders, knew this was just the first chapter. Those early morning raids had done their job. They'd drawn the line, claimed the ground, and proven who was in charge. If these coordinated strikes before dawn showed how wide the net had been cast, The next stage would reveal who built the structure powerful enough to demand such force to tear it down. So here's the question. What really happens when federal agencies move this fast and this quietly in a major American city? Drop your thoughts below, because this story is far from over. As the search teams pushed deeper into the sealed buildings, what they uncovered next would shift everything, turning a controlled operation into something no one had seen coming. What started as a quiet investigation exploded into full-blown exposure. As agents pried deeper into the buildings, hidden rooms began to appear, tucked behind fake walls and sealed storage panels. Narrow doors were forced open, revealing secret chambers never meant for public eyes. Inside, long tables were lined up in perfect order, and thick power cables snaked across the floor like veins feeding something alive. These weren't ordinary offices or dusty supply closets. They were cash rooms built for speed, precision, and secrecy. Stacks of bundled bills sat in neat rows, some wrapped tight in plastic, others marked with coded notes and handwritten dates. Industrial money counters lined the tables, still warm to the touch, showing that they'd been running just minutes before the raids hit. Agents moved with careful steps, snapping photos, dusting surfaces, and separating piles of cash into methodical stacks that told a story of non-stop movement. When the machines were cracked open, fine dust from paper bills filled the air, proof of heavy daily use. Ledgers yanked from drawers told the rest of the story, page after page of cold, relentless numbers. These weren't tracking services or community work. They were tracking flow, movement, transfers, and all of it pointed far away from anything local. The sheer volume of money was staggering. This wasn't backup cash or rainy day reserves. It was a financial engine running day after day beneath the city's radar. The evidence was everywhere. Compressed bricks of currency ready for transport, sitting just blocks from major roads. And then came the tech sweep. Agents powering down laptops, hard drives, and encrypted devices that glowed with spreadsheets linking to accounts far beyond US borders. Routing paths stretched across oceans, looping back without pause, mapping a network that was clearly bigger than anyone expected. This wasn't just local corruption. It was global money in motion, hiding in plain sight. What the agents found next blew the investigation wide open. Bank records told the story in cold, undeniable lines. Local withdrawals connected directly to offshore accounts, with every transfer perfectly timed to dodge attention. The money trails spread across dozens of banks, each move calculated to disappear in the noise of daily transactions. Agents mapped it all out with precision, following the current as it flowed from community programs straight into foreign financial centers. The pattern didn't need explanation. It screamed corruption. The money never stopped moving, never rested, and every transfer was built to erase its own tracks. What started as domestic fraud had morphed into full-blown international laundering, and the proof was sitting right there: ledgers, spreadsheets, and coded logs stacked in plain sight. As financial teams locked down those sites, another wave of agents hit the industrial districts, chasing addresses tied to humanitarian warehouses that looked perfectly normal from the outside. The paint was faded, the signs looked honest, the loading docks worn down by years of routine deliveries. But when those steel doors were breached with controlled precision, the truth hit like a punch. The air inside carried a sharp chemical bite that had nothing to do with food or aid. Inside, rows of pallets filled the floor, each one piled high with sacks labeled for relief shipments, complete with clean logos and printed slogans about hope and help. But the illusion shattered fast. When agents sliced the bags open, the aid spilled out in tight, sealed bricks of fentanyl. Beneath layers of fake packaging was a deadly network hiding behind charity fronts. The warehouse floor turned into a maze of evidence zones, crates marked and logged as teams moved deeper. Each container repeated the same deception: drugs wrapped for transport, stamped with symbols tied to major Mexican cartels, all prepped for quiet distribution beyond Minneapolis. And parked right outside? Vans and trucks registered to non-profit names, their interiors secretly reinforced to carry heavy loads without raising suspicion. The chain was complete now. money stolen at home, laundered abroad, and flipped into poison that was coming right back to American streets. The entire system was a loop of deceit, one that agents had finally cracked wide open. The operation pressed deeper into the warehouse, and every step revealed another layer of precision and corruption. Agents moved carefully, tracing the routes between packaging zones and office corners, where every inch of space had been used for control and concealment. Phones recovered from desks painted the next picture, contact lists full of numbers that led straight south, connecting middlemen in the city to cartel handlers who managed the supply routes with military-style organization. Shipping logs told the rest of the story: routine schedules, identical routes, and fuel receipts timed to perfection. Every trip was planned to dodge inspections, every detail designed to keep the system invisible. Inside that silent maze, you could feel the order. No chaos, no panic, just the cold efficiency of organized crime at work. Breaking one link of this chain had started to expose everything beneath it. Then came the discovery no one expected: a set of reinforced doors sealed tight, with air so thin the flashlights barely cut through the dark. Agents entered slowly, weapons low but ready, and what they found inside stopped everyone cold. People, not products. Men and women lined the walls, sitting in silence, eyes cast down. Their passports were locked away, their phones gone, and the marks of exhaustion told a story of endless shifts. These were migrants lured by false promises, trapped in a system that used debt and fear instead of chains. The control was quiet, but absolute. Debts were logged in notebooks, rising with every meal, every night spent in those rooms. Escaping felt impossible. Agents later found records of threats aimed at families back home used to keep obedience steady. No shouting, no guards with guns out, just the constant pressure of fear. Agents moved carefully among them, offering water, comfort, and a promise of help. Every detail they documented showed the truth. This was forced labor hidden under the cover of charity and commerce. Files found nearby spelled it out in black and white. Names repeated across documents, linked to welfare claims, shipping manifests, and fake work rosters. The same people had been counted multiple times for profit, used until they were no longer needed, then replaced without hesitation. What had begun as a money trail now revealed a full-scale system of exploitation, powered by deceit and fear. And Minneapolis had only seen a fraction of what lay beneath. These people had been turned into numbers, cold statistics used to justify payments, move goods, and absorb blame. The entire network fed on vulnerability, blending legitimate systems with criminal demands so seamlessly that victims were trapped in plain sight. Every action the agents took peeled back another layer of that twisted design, a machine built on exploitation disguised as service. As the day stretched on, evidence flowed steadily from every raid site into federal custody. The connections became crystal clear. Cash rooms, drug warehouses, and human trafficking hubs weren't separate operations, but pieces of one self-sustaining loop. Each location supported the next, feeding money, labor, and product into a cycle that never stopped. The raids didn't just disrupt it, they exposed the entire structure in front of the nation. What began as financial fraud had evolved into a complex network of drug movement and forced labor, all shielded behind the masks of humanitarian work and public aid. The design was genius in its deception, and sickening in its reach. As agents sealed off the last hidden rooms and prepped for the next phase, one truth hung in the air. This wasn't just local corruption anymore. The network stretched far beyond Minneapolis. Money flowed overseas, drugs came flooding back, and people were caught in the middle, all of it running under the illusion of service and support. But now, the masks were off, and the investigation was moving toward the architects, the power players who built and protected the system. Then came the turning point, the arrest wave. With precision matching the early morning raids, teams rolled out across Minneapolis once again. Targets were already boxed in after hours of silent prep. Agents hit multiple addresses in perfect sync, arriving at offices, luxury homes, and secure buildings almost simultaneously. Within seconds, streets were locked down, vehicles blocked exits, and every escape route vanished. Inside those walls, the takedown was ruthless but controlled. Individuals tied to the network were identified, separated, searched, and restrained in fast, efficient motions. There was no shouting, no chaos, just sharp, deliberate action that left no room for resistance. The shift across the city was instant and electric. Sirens rose, helicopters cut the air, and word spread fast. This wasn't a single arrest, it was a mass sweep, expanding in every direction at once. And in the middle of it all came the headline moment. The senator tied to the operation, the one seen for years as untouchable, was finally taken into custody. Minneapolis had just watched power collapse in real time, and the story was only getting started. Agents moved through the property with calm precision and unstoppable force. Every room was cleared, every drawer opened, and every personal item carefully set aside. Documents were gathered methodically as officers kept the scene under full control. No speeches, no warnings, no hesitation. The only sounds cutting through the silence were handcuffs locking and footsteps echoing down the hallway toward waiting vehicles parked outside. Across town, the same outcome played out in real time. Associates and insiders faced the same fate as tactical teams flooded offices and meeting rooms where quiet deals and secret decisions had once been made. Phones were seized, bags were searched, and names were matched against pre-written lists. Hours of planning now paying off in minutes of execution. Before sunrise, power had changed hands, not through debate or negotiation, but through sheer action. The pattern repeated over and over. Non-profit offices, private apartments, and business fronts all tied to the same network. Every door opened was another piece of the collapse. Agents moved with a single goal: collect the records, seize the cash, and dismantle the digital core that once controlled the entire operation. Safes were cracked open under federal supervision, spilling bundles of currency and sealed folders that were never meant to see daylight. Every item taken was tagged, logged, and moved under tight chain of custody protocols. The circle of control around the suspects tightened fast, leaving no room for warning calls or cover-ups. Communication lines had already gone dark. Vehicles filled with detainees rolled out one by one, escorted through tense but eerily calm streets, while agents on the ground held position like clockwork. Behind them, evidence teams worked with cold precision, mapping out influence, power, and corruption line by line. Every seized file, every recovered laptop, built a trail straight to the top. Through it all, the sense of control never once wavered. Each team knew their exact role, moving in flawless rhythm, a coordinated takedown of an empire built on deceit. Within hours, names that once commanded authority were reduced to labels on arrest sheets. The empire they had built on manipulation, fraud, and fear collapsed inward under its own weight. Minneapolis had just witnessed a historic dismantling, a fall so fast, so complete, that the silence afterward felt louder than the raid itself. As the arrests wrapped up, the true scale of what had been seized finally came into focus. Tables once covered in blueprints and paperwork now overflowed with boxes of electronics, stacks of documents, and piles of counted cash, each item a trophy from the dismantled empire. Agents coordinated every transfer with precision, ensuring nothing was lost, swapped, or misplaced. Watching the evidence move out was like seeing a machine being taken apart piece by piece, every wire and cog removed until there was nothing left to power the network. All that influence, once scattered across offices, shell accounts, and fake charities, was now in federal custody. But the mission wasn't done yet. As detainees were processed, another wave of enforcement hit the city, this time aimed not at people, but at the systems that had made the whole operation possible. Federal teams turned their focus toward administrative centers and government offices, the very places where oversight was supposed to live. And this time, the message was delivered through action, not talk. Systems were flagged, accounts frozen, and automated transfers slammed to a halt. Inspectors arrived with warrants in hand, locking down payment pipelines that had quietly fed the operation for years. Medicaid disbursements and benefit systems came under the microscope. Every transaction now required eyes, signatures, and proof. The money flow had finally slowed to a crawl. Then came the nonprofit crackdown. Oversight agencies moved in fast, reviewing registrations, auditing records, and showing up for surprise on-site inspections. Offices that had once operated unchecked suddenly found agents at their doors, clipboards in hand, demanding proof of service. Compliance was no longer a courtesy, it was mandatory. Each step wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. These actions cut off every access point the network had used to hide, closing the gaps that allowed empty rooms to claim full funding. Every inspection, every frozen account tightened the walls around corruption that had once spread without fear. And it didn't stop there. Immigration enforcement moved in next, targeting those who had built false identities and used fabricated statuses to fuel the scheme. The approach was sharp, direct, and relentless. No more loopholes, no more blind spots. The cleanup wasn't just about arrests anymore. It was about rewiring the entire system that had allowed this web of deceit to thrive for so long. Fraudulent claims had been the mask-hiding criminal activity, but that disguise finally shattered. Federal units moved in perfect sync, coordinating removals, interrogations, and document reviews that separated victims from the masterminds behind it all. Inside the temporary processing centers, every seat filled fast as cases rolled forward, one file at a time, one name at a time. Each controlled step sent the same clear message. Exploitation would no longer hide behind paperwork or bureaucracy. The impact didn't stop at Minneapolis. Federal agencies began sharing methods, data, and strategy, closing loopholes across states to make sure this same system could never grow again. What followed was a total shift from tolerance to action. The transformation wasn't spoken. It was shown through movement, speed, and precision. This was never about one person or one office. It was about tearing down an entire structure that had thrived in silence, built on neglect and corruption. Every arrest, every seized account, every inspection tightened the pressure, crushing the layers that once protected the people in power. The network had survived by being invisible, but visibility had now become its downfall. As the city began to adjust to the new order, Minneapolis looked and felt different. The steady presence of enforcement made denial impossible. Police cruisers at every corner, federal vans parked outside once untouchable offices. Order didn't return through promises. It came through consistent, visible control. Across every district, the message was clear. Oversight was back, and this time it wasn't leaving. By evening, the final detainees were processed, and the last trucks carrying evidence pulled away from the city's core. But even as calm settled in, the pause felt temporary, not final. What had collapsed in a single day had exposed how deeply the corruption ran, and how far beyond city limits it stretched. As the lights dimmed on the raid sites and the paperwork began to pile, a sense of unease replaced victory. Minneapolis had revealed something far bigger than a local scandal. It had exposed a blueprint, a system where fraud, narcotics, and political protection intertwined so tightly they functioned as one. And the most chilling realization of all? This system didn't die in one day. It just lost its cover. For years, public funds meant to lift communities had been drained dry through fake organizations and ghost programs. The money was funneled through hidden channels, disguised as aid, and shipped far beyond Minneapolis. But it didn't stay gone. It came back twisted, returning as fuel for drug distribution, organized crime, and street-level chaos that everyday people ended up paying for. The drug link uncovered in this investigation showed a dark truth. Modern crime doesn't separate fraud from narcotics anymore. The welfare system became the front line, turning benefit money into working capital, while offshore accounts acted as bridges to move profits around the world. In the end, fentanyl became the final product, sold on the same streets the stolen funds were meant to protect. This wasn't random crime. It was methodical, rehearsed, and protected by paperwork and authority that made it look legitimate. When agents stepped into those cash rooms, warehouses, and hidden offices, they weren't just stopping lawbreakers. They were cutting straight through a machine built to look lawful while destroying lives. The deeper they dug, the more they found that politics had quietly played its part. People in positions of power didn't need to get their hands dirty. They just looked the other way. That quiet distance from scrutiny was enough to keep everything running. Inspections slowed. Questions stopped. Oversight broke down right where it should have been strongest. That silence was the oxygen the network needed. It grew unchecked until it stretched from local welfare offices to international shipping routes. What made it even more disturbing was the system's ability to adapt instantly, covering its tracks without violence, using nothing but access, reputation, and delay. And that's exactly why this story can't end in Minneapolis. The tools that made this possible, automated payment pipelines, nonprofit shells, weak oversight, exist everywhere. They're not unique to one city or one scandal. If one operation could run this smoothly, this silently, for so many years, how many others are still active right now under different names and faces? The evidence left behind doesn't just expose a network, it challenges the system itself. Because what happened here wasn't just a crime, it was a blueprint, and unless it's torn apart piece by piece, it can rebuild itself anywhere. Some networks may already be moving money, drugs, and people through the same hidden channels, waiting for the next loophole to open. What happened in Minneapolis wasn't an isolated scandal. It was a blueprint exposed. But the federal response proved something important. Systems can be fixed when pressure is applied fast and without hesitation. Stronger Medicaid verification, tougher nonprofit audits, and coordinated immigration enforcement aren't symbolic gestures. They're barriers built to block organized exploitation from ever gaining that kind of ground again. When enforcement becomes constant, criminal empires lose the dark corners they rely on. When oversight turns real, fraud doesn't vanish, it suffocates. Still, one question lingers like an echo. How many more systems like this are still running quietly, hidden under paperwork and silence? How many fake charities, false aid programs, and silent shell groups are out there operating right now, untouched because no one's looking close enough? Minneapolis wasn't the conclusion, it was the warning shot. A reminder that what hides behind bureaucracy can destroy entire communities if left unchecked. The real challenge isn't what's been uncovered, it's what's still waiting in the shadows, disguised as help but designed for profit. If you want to stay on top of investigations like this, to see how hidden networks are exposed, how corruption gets cornered, and how real enforcement changes everything, subscribe to Military Power. Drop your thoughts below and tell us, how many networks like this do you think are still out there, waiting to be found? Like, share, comment, and subscribe, because this story isn't over yet, and the next discovery might already be underway.